I told myself it was nothing, a wrong number, a joke from her coworker, anything but the truth gnawing at my gut. But then came the changes. Her phone always face down on the kitchen counter, like it held state secrets. The new perfume she never wore for me, something floral and expensive that made my stomach turn when I caught its scent on our pillows. The way she'd pull away when I tried to kiss her, her lips tight with guilt as if my touch burned her. That Tuesday morning, I was pouring coffee when her phone buzzed. Jake. The name flashed on the screen for just a second before she snatched it away. "Who's Jake?" I asked, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Saw his name pop up on your phone." Sarah's fork froze midair, a piece of scrambled egg dangling precariously. Her eyes darted everywhere except to mine. Just a client. The silence that followed was louder than any confession. It filled the kitchen, thick as smoke, choking us both. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked away the seconds while I watched my wife of 7 years struggle to swallow her lie along with her breakfast. I'd known Sarah since college. I knew her tells, the way she bit her lower lip when she was nervous, how she twisted her wedding ring when she was thinking, how she couldn't look me in the eye when she was hiding something. She was doing all three. I'd never been the jealous type. Until today. She said she was working late, another client dinner, she claimed, adjusting her lipstick in the hallway mirror. But the tracker on our shared car account led me to a cafe 20 miles from her office, nestled in a part of town where we'd never been together. And there she was, laughing, touching his arm, leaning in so close her hair brushed his cheek. I sat in my car across the street, rain pelting the windshield, watching my entire world crumble through streaked glass. He was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with that easy confidence I'd lost somewhere between mortgage payments and middle age. Dark hair, broad shoulders, the kind of smile that made women forget they were married. But it wasn't just that. He was attractive. It was the way she looked at him. 7 years of marriage, and she was looking at him the way she used to look at me. Like he was the only person in the room. Like his words were poetry and his laugh was music. I remembered when she used to light up like that for me. When my jokes were the funniest thing she'd ever heard. When my touch sent shivers down her spine instead of making her flinch. When did I become the stranger? When did I become the one she had to lie to? I waited until he left, watched him kiss her cheek goodbye, too long, too intimate for a client. Then I stormed across the street, my heart hammering against my ribs like a caged bird. The cafe smelled like coffee and betrayal. Sarah was gathering her things, humming softly to herself. She looked happy, radiant even. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her look like that. "Client meeting?" I asked, my voice calm but deadly. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her purse slipped from her fingers, contents scattering across the floor. Lip gloss, breath mints, a hotel keycard she scrambled to hide. "It's not what you don't." I slammed my fist on the table, making her coffee cup jump. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." The cafe went silent. Other patrons turned too. Stare, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Sarah's tears were immediate and real. But so was the way her phone lit up with another message from him as she begged me to listen. Jake, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same time? The words on the screen might as well have been written in my blood. She followed me home in her car, and I could see her crying in my rearview mirror. By the time we reached our driveway, she was sobbing so hard she could barely walk. We only kissed, she wailed from our bathroom floor, mascara streaking down her cheeks. It didn't mean anything. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the tile walls. Bullshit. You gave him pieces of yourself you stopped giving me months ago. That's when the receipts tumbled out, like dominoes falling in slow motion. Late night. Calls deleted from her log, but I'd found them on our phone bill. Hotel charges disguised as team dinners on our credit card statement. The bracelet I'd never seen her wear, thin gold with his initials engraved inside, hidden in her jewelry. Box beneath her grandmother's pearls. How long? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. 3 months, she whispered. Maybe 4. 4 months. 4 months of coming home to me, kissing me with lips that had been on his. 4 months of sleeping beside me while dreaming of him. 4 months of I love you that meant nothing. The worst part? She still smelled like him. His cologne clung to her skin, her hair, her clothes. Our bedroom reeked of his presence, this stranger who'd invaded our life without ever setting foot in our house. Counseling was her idea. Please, she begged, kneeling on our bedroom floor at 2 in the morning. I'll do anything. I'll cut off all contact. I'll quit my job. You'll what? Erase the last 4 months? Unbreak my heart? Unfuck him? She winced at the crudeness, but I was past caring about her delicate sensibilities. Dr. Martinez was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and infinite patience. Affairs are symptoms, she said during our first session. Let's find the disease. What we uncovered was uglier than the affair itself. The miscarriages we never properly grieved, 3 of them in 2 years, each one leaving us more broken than the last. My 80-hour work weeks that left her alone with the silence and the emptiness. Her whispering, I just wanted to feel wanted again, like it was a crime. I felt invisible, she sobbed during our 4th session. Like I was disappearing. A little more each day. Jake made me feel ... alive. And I made you feel dead? I asked. You made me feel like a ghost. The words hung between us, sharp as broken glass, because she was right. I had been going through the motions, treating our marriage like a business partnership instead of a love story. When was the last time I'd really looked at her? When had I stopped seeing her as Sarah and started seeing her as just ... Wife? We agreed to a trial separation, 2 months apart to figure out what we really wanted. Sarah moved in with her sister, and I rattled around our empty house like a lost soul. The silence was deafening. No more humming from the kitchen. More of her terrible reality TV shows playing in the background. No more warm body beside me in bed, even if that body had been pulling away from me for months. I found myself doing things I hadn't done in years. Cooking actual meals instead of grabbing takeout, going to the gym, calling my friends, reading books that weren't about work, remembering who I was before I became half of a failing marriage. And Sarah? She was doing her own work, therapy 3 times a week, yoga classes, art lessons. She was finding herself again, the woman I'd fallen in love with in college before life got complicated. We met for coffee on a neutral ground, ironically, the same cafe where I'd confronted her. She looked different. Lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying a weight I'd never noticed. "I ended it," she said before I could speak. "With Jake the day after the day you found out." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" She slid her phone across the table, screen up. Check everything. I have nothing left to hide. I didn't touch it. Because somewhere in the last 2 months, I'd realized that trust wasn't about checking phones or tracking locations. It was about choosing to believe, even when believing felt impossible. We started dating again. Strange as it sounds, we courted each other like teenagers. Coffee dates and long walks. Movie nights where we actually watched the movie instead of scrolling through our phones. Conversations that lasted until dawn. She told me about Jake, really told me. How he'd made her feel young and desired in a way she'd forgotten was possible. How the guilt ate at her every single day, but she couldn't stop because the alternative was going back to feeling invisible. I told her about my affair, not with a person, but with work. How I'd chosen deadlines over date nights, meetings over marriage, success over love. How I'd been just as unfaithful in my own way, just less obvious about it. "We both abandoned this marriage," I said one night as we sat on our front porch, her head on my shoulder. "The difference is you found someone else first." "I'm sorry," she whispered for the 1,000th time. "I'm so sorry." "I know, I'm sorry too." Moving back in together was harder than I'd expected. We'd grown used to our separate spaces, our individual healing. Suddenly we were sharing a bathroom again, negotiating whose turn it was to take out the trash, tiptoeing around each other like strangers. Some nights I'd wake up and find her side of the bed empty. I'd panic, thinking she'd left again, only to find her in the kitchen making tea, staring out the window at the stars. "Can't sleep?" I'd ask. "Nightmares," she'd admit. "About losing you, about losing us." I'd make 2 cups of tea, and we'd sit at our kitchen table in the dark, not talking, just being present with each other. These midnight vigils became our new normal, our way of rebuilding intimacy without the pressure of words. The first time we made love after the affair, we both cried. Not from passion, but from grief. For what we'd lost, for what we'd done to each other, for the innocence that could never be reclaimed. But it was also beautiful, raw and honest in a way we'd never been before. We were making love with our scars showing, our flaws exposed, our hearts broken but still beating. Recovery isn't linear. There were days when I'd see a man with dark hair and feel my chest tighten. When her phone would buzz and I'd feel that familiar spike of panic. When she'd come home 5 minutes late and I'd imagine her in another man's arms. The worst was when we'd drive past that cafe. Sarah would go quiet, her hands twisted in her lap, and I'd feel the ghost of that night pressing down on us like a storm cloud. "Should we find a new route?" she asked one day. "No," I said, surprising myself. "We can't keep running from our past. We have to learn to live with it." So we drove past it every day. Some days it hurt, some days it was just a building. But gradually it lost its power over us. It became just another cafe in a city full of them, no longer the scene of our greatest betrayal. Sarah went back to therapy, and I joined her sometimes. We learned new vocabulary for our pain. Trauma bonding, betrayal trauma, hypervigilance. We learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, but about integrating our pain into our story. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, Dr. Martinez told us. It's built through 1,000 small moments. Every time Sarah comes home when she says she will. Every time she answers her phone on the first ring. Every time she chooses transparency over privacy. Every time you choose to believe her instead of your fear. A year later, we still sleep with our phones charging in the hallway. Not because we don't trust each other, but because we've learned that trust is an action, not a feeling. We've created new rituals, new boundaries, new ways of being together that honor both our healing and our history. We go to counseling every month, not because we're broken, but because we're committed to staying connected. We have a weekly date night that's sacred, phones off, just us, remembering why we fell in love in the first place. Sarah changed jobs. Not because I asked her to, but because she wanted a fresh start. She's working for a nonprofit now, helping other women navigate life transitions. She says saving our marriage taught her something about saving herself. I cut back my hours at work. Not dramatically, but enough to be present for the small moments. Morning coffee together, evening walks, weekend adventures to places we've never been. Some nights I still see his name when I close my eyes, Jake, the man who almost destroyed my marriage but somehow, paradoxically, helped save it. Because his presence in our story forced us to confront truths we'd been avoiding for years. The affair wasn't the disease. It was the symptom. The disease was disconnection, complacency, the slow drift that happens when you stop choosing each other every day. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. It came in waves, like grief. Some days I felt generous and understanding. Other days I felt raw and angry, like the wound had been freshly opened. I don't know how to forgive you, I told Sarah one night, 6 months after we'd moved back in together. I don't know how to forgive myself, she replied. We were both right. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a practice. A choice you make over and over, some days more successfully than others. I started a journal, writing letters to Sarah that I never sent. Letters full of rage and hurt and love and hope. Slowly, the anger began to transform into something else. Not acceptance, exactly, but understanding. She hadn't set out to hurt me. She'd been drowning, and Jake had been the life preserver that appeared when she needed it most. That didn't make it right, but it made it human. Sarah wrote letters too, to Jake, mostly, that she never sent. Getting closure on a relationship that had ended abruptly, without explanation or goodbye. She needed to mourn that loss too, even if admitting it hurt both of us. I loved him, she confessed one night, the words heavy as stones. Not the way I love you, but ... I loved him. It was the truth I'd been dreading and the truth I needed to hear. Because you can't build a marriage on lies, even comfortable ones. This will sound crazy, but I'm grateful for the affair. Not glad it happened, but grateful for what it taught us. It stripped away our pretenses, our politeness, our ability to avoid the hard conversations. It forced us to rebuild our marriage from the ground up with stronger materials and better foundations. We learned that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, a daily commitment to show up for each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. We learned that marriage isn't a destination, but a journey. There's no arriving, no point where you can coast. You have to keep choosing each other over and over through boredom and passion, through crisis and calm. We learned that we're both capable of betrayal and we're both capable of forgiveness. That knowledge is terrifying and liberating in equal measure. We talk about having children again. Not to fix our marriage, we know better now, but because we want to share our love with someone new. We've been through the fire and come out stronger. We think we might have something worth passing on. Sarah's hand finds mine in the dark, now not his. Her laugh is reserved for my jokes again. Her body turns toward me in sleep instead of away. Some nights I still wake up and check that she's really there. Some nights she does the same. We've learned that trust is fragile, that it can be rebuilt, but it's never quite the same as it was before. It's deeper now, more intentional, earned rather than assumed. We're different people than we were before the affair. Sadder in some ways, but wiser. More careful with each other's hearts, but also more honest about our needs and fears. I'm telling you this story not for sympathy, but for truth. Affairs happen to good people in good marriages. They happen when you stop paying attention, when you let life's demands overshadow love's requirements, when you take each other for granted. But they're not always the end of the story. Sometimes they're the beginning of a new chapter, one written with full knowledge of what's at stake. Our wedding rings tell a different story now. They're not symbols of unbroken promises, but of promises renewed. We had them re-engraved on our 7th anniversary. Choose love, choose again, choose always. That's our vow now. Not to love each other perfectly, we've proven that's impossible, but to choose love every day. To choose each other, flaws and all, scars and all, history and all. A year and a half later, we still sleep with our phones charging in the hallway. Some nights I still see his name when I close my eyes. But Sarah's hand finds mine in the dark, noun, not his. And that has to be enough, because love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And every morning we choose each other again. The sound of a wedding ring being placed gently on a nightstand, then picked up again, a symbol of choice rather than obligation.